Thrilled or relieved? Head coach of the Ragin Cajuns, Bob Marlin, coming up on Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. We are thrilled to have the head coach of the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns basketball team, Bob Marlin, joining us. He will do so momentarily. He is either thrilled or relieved, or maybe both. He talks about playing South Alabama for the third time this season and twice in about 10 days. And then also, what about that Sunbelt Conference tournament format? Obviously, it is tough to please everybody. And we obviously talk about the NCAA Tournament and getting ready to go dancing. It is the head coach of the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns basketball team, Bob Marlin. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Thrilled to have the head coach of the Sunbelt Conference tournament champion, the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. It's head coach Bob Marlin. Second time they have won this. He's going back to the NCAA Tournament with the Ragin Cajuns. Had an impressive victory over South Alabama in what was a classic ball game. Coach, is there more? Are you more thrilled with it, or are you more relieved with the victory?
We were thrilled and relieved, Dave.
Right.
At the end of it, we were excited because it's been a long journey. We were picked to win the league. We felt like we had one of the best teams, and we were able to prove it in Pensacola.
So what happened in that? Because you had that 10-game winning streak, and then you stubbed your toe a little bit, Southern Miss and Troy, and then you lost 3 out of 4.
Yeah, well, we won 10 in a row. We started 0-2. The Coastal game totally, we felt like it was taken from us, to be honest. We lost by 1, then we go to ODU, lose by 4. And we come home, we beat Southern Miss and Georgia State, and it starts off a 10-game winning streak. We also started with 6 of 8 games on the road in conference play, and only James Madison and I got that honor. But once we got through it undefeated, I was excited. But no, the 10th win was against Marshall at home, and then we went to Southern Miss. They had built that game up all year, had a great crowd. We go in as an underdog, and they beat us. We're up in the second half. Then we go to Troy, and South Alabama had just lost to them. That's one of their South Alabama's only 3 losses in the last 14 games.
Right.
2 to us and 1 to them. So Troy was playing with a lot of confidence, and Zay Williams played great. Nelson Phillips played great, and they beat us. And they finished 5th in the league. Southern Miss is 1st, right. And then we come home and beat Monroe, play well, go to JMU, and they're good. They're 4th in the league. We don't play great, and we had the lead with 7 minutes to go, and with 5 to go, Jordan Brown was fouled out of the game, and we wound up losing that game. So the way I look at it, Dave, the last 3 road games we had were probably the toughest road games we had all year.
All right, so let's back it up, because we talked about it in October at the Sunbelt Media Days, and you admitted the reason that the Cajuns were picked is because basically every other team was new, and you guys had the most guys back. So what was it easier to deal with that? Whereas I think like a Richie Riley, I think he took like a couple months to figure out what he had. You knew what you had. How did you deal with that from the beginning of the season, and knowing that you're building to 1 weekend of the year?
Yeah, we knew we had a good team for sure in the summer, and once Jordan returned, he put his name in the draft and then came back. We felt like if we could stay healthy, and we did pretty much until the championship game.
Right.
Greg Williams had to sit the second half and just couldn't go. But we felt like we could get back to that stage, and that's why it was kind of a thrill and a relief, Dave, because it's so hard to do that. And we lost the conference by 1 game. If Texas State would have beaten Southern Miss, we would have got the 1 seed in the tiebreaker. But I like the way it all played out.
I'm sure that you do. Can we have a little Texas State conversation? They are so annoyingly good, right? Mason Harrell's all of 5'9", and yet really good. He can actually make a jump shot, and they don't go away. They don't go away. It doesn't matter who you are. You're up by 10 or 12, and then you blink, and like you did in the semifinals, it's a 2-point game. I mean, they're well coached. I guess they were banged up. Mason Harrell was out for a little bit, but they are an annoyingly good basketball team.
And you know what's crazy, Dave? They started the year off. They lost a couple games at home, and then they go in conference play, and they win 3 straight. I think they beat Arkansas State, JMU, and South on the road, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they beat them. Yeah.
So and that shows you're a good team. And then I think they were maybe 2-7 at home in conference. They really struggled at home, but on the road they're good, and they've done a good job. Mason Harrell's a pesky player. The first time we played him, he missed the game because he got hurt against Marshall the game before.
Right.
And then at our place was one of maybe his second game back, and he wasn't quite the same. And then the first half of the game the other night, we held him to 0 points. And I told the guys at halftime, he's coming this second half, so you better bear down. And he throws in a 28-foot hook shot or something. I thought it was a pass. But,
I think it was. I think Martin was rolling to the hoop, but he made it.
But got him going, and he's a good little player for sure. And you have to beat them, Dave. I think that's the compliment you just paid them. They do not go away. You got to put them away.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. I guess Marshall found out that the hard way. We're talking to Bob Marlin, head coach of the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. It is Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, so let's back it up even further. You were in the same spot as you were this year as you were last year. But, boy, you were dealing with something personal. You brought it up in the post-game show. My father passed away a couple of years ago, but I happened to be able to take a week off, which was perfect. You're in the middle of trying to get your 8-seeded Ragin Cajuns to, win the Sun Belt Conference Championship. You're going on a run. You're in the finals, and your mom is sick, and you're able to go back and forth. How did you deal with that personally and professionally?
Well, it was a blow for sure. I just talked to her the weekend, and she sounded good, but she was doing fine. And then on Wednesday, we got down in practice, and I talked to her, and her voice was real weak, Dave. So I didn't like that. And then the next day, the hospice people called and said that she's not doing well. So we played. Arlington had a day off, and they called me and said she's really struggling. So on Friday night, so Jenny and I decided to play the game, coach the game against Texas State, which they were the 1 and we were the 8. Guys played great. Jordan had a big game. We beat them. We run back to the hotel at 3:30 and jump in the car. Luckily, we had our car there, and we drove to the 6 hours to Mississippi, and we were there in Tupelo. We got there about 9:30, and she passed at 3:45 a.m. So we hopped in the car at 7:30 and drove back and coached against Troy in the semifinals. So it was an emotional weekend. It was my birthday as well, but never easy, right? It doesn't matter, Dave. You lose a parent, it's never easy. And in some ways, I think that the basketball and our players got me through it. I could feel her strength, and somebody said the other day she swatted that last Owen White shot out. So.
Right? Maybe blew it. I don't know about swatted, but maybe blew it a half an inch off. You didn't leave Mike Murphy in charge of the team, did you?
No, not at all.
We're talking to head coach Bob Marlin, Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. Probably rather talk about the St. Louis Cardinals in spring training than his own team going to the dance. How good is Jordan Brown? Because he had one of the all-time great ball games that I saw in the Sun Belt this year against Marshall, 26-20.
And then the game, Dave, you were in Lafayette for the game.
Did miss, yeah.
And he goes 13-15 versus Defensive Player of the Year, who's a heck of a player.
Right.
So he's a talent. I think he's one of the best low post scorers in the country. And when we play a week from Thursday or a week from Friday, then I'll feel good about whoever he's matched up with, because they'll have to do some things to game plan for him.
Well, it'll be interesting because there's not a lot of teams in the country that have a post player like a Jordan Brown. Let's talk about, you mentioned Greg Williams. What's his prognosis? Because he really, during that 10-game winning streak, he was really the Robin to Jordan Brown's Batman. He was in 5 straight games. The kid from LCA, he had 20 points in 5 straight ball games. What was that like seeing Greg Williams come of age?
Well, it was fantastic. And after we beat Georgia State at home, we went to Monroe and played those guys, and Greg played fantastic, had a top 10 Sports Center dunk, and we left there and went to Mobile to play South, and Greg had a great game at Mobile, and he just continued to play like that, Dave, all the way through, and very deserving of second team all conference. Great young man and a really good basketball player.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll talk to Bob Marlin about playing South Alabama for the 3rd time this season in the Sun Belt Championship game and twice in 10 days. But first, let me tell you a little bit about FanDuel. It's the midway point of the NBA season, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets back when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Dave Schultz back on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's get back to our discussion with Bob Marlin. How do you game plan to play South Alabama for the 3rd time this season and 2nd time in 10 days? So, all right, so now let's go to the South. You played them 3 times this year. You played them the week before, as you mentioned, in Lafayette, and now you're going to play them about 10 days later in the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. The first game was close, right? You've been playing without Kevin Samuel. Marshall Carring had a ridiculous ball game, like 15-9 off of the bench. You guys held off. It was a game that, South Alabama could have won, not necessarily should have won, but could have won. Then you had a relatively good 10-point lead. You changed up your defense. You extended the defense a little bit, preventing them from shooting threes, something that I know you like to do, and actually a pretty good job on Isaiah Moore, putting Joe Charles on him. What was your game plan going in? Because it was very clear what South Alabama's game plan was going to be. Jordan Brown is not going to beat us and, make somebody else did, and somebody else did, and his name was Themis Folks. But we'll get to him in a second. What was your game plan going in, playing South Alabama for the 3rd time?
Well, we knew that we'd beaten them twice, but we had a lot of respect for them. The first time we played them, they weren't whole. They weren't connected as they were. And they continued to grind, and they got it going and had a great second half of the conference season. When we played them at home, it was a big game for us, obviously, because we were trying to still get first in the league. And also, we were trying to go undefeated at the Cajun Dome. And you're playing a really hot opponent that at that time, I want to say had won 8 of 9. I can't remember exactly.
That's right. That's exactly it. Yep.
They were red hot. They were shooting the ball well. Owen White was shooting the ball well. Judah Brown was shooting the ball well. And, of course, Moore and Samuel were playing, and Turbo. I mean, they had a good first 6, 7 guys. And then we get to the tournament, and Parham starts playing good too. So right. He didn't really do much against us the first 2 games. But we knew he was a problem in the championship game. But we felt like that we could beat him. I know what it's like to play 4 games in that tournament,
right?
Consecutive, and it's tough. And I thought South got a little bit tired in the second half, and I thought our defense was good. Our game plan was to take away the 3, as you said, Dave, and Isaiah Moore. You said Joe Charles did a good job on him in Mobile, and maybe in Lafayette, but he was a handful over there. We put different guys on him. There were a couple of phantom fouls I didn't see, but he's a heck of a player and can really get to the basket. But at the end of the day, two's not as bad as three.
Right. Well, I mean, it is amazing because, the Cajuns, it's watching both teams, the Cajuns and the Jaguars, they have the same kind of point guard, although I think Themis Folks may be a little bit more straight line to the hoop than Isaiah Moore, who's kind of backing you down. But neither one of them shoots threes. And when you know it, Themis Folks comes up huge, makes 11 threes all season long. He's a total of like 2 for 13 from the floor in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game or in the tournament. And he comes up with a season high 23 points and 3 of 6. Again, South Alabama said, Jordan Brown's not going to beat us. But in this case, Themis Folks did. Tell us about Themis, because he had a whale of a ball game in a big, big spot. He literally, outside of free throws, but he was really the difference in the ball game on why, the Cajuns won the game.
We stepped up in a big way, and you're talking about Isaiah Moore, similar from shooting from three. He jumps up and makes one.
Right, he did too. Yes, right. He's 1 of 2. That's right.
Our coaches are scratching their head, but that's what we wanted. And then Themis jumps up and makes 3. And the first one was big because it was early in the game, and we were having trouble scoring. We taken a couple of ill-advised shots, and South came out hot. So we trailed, the entire first half pretty much. And Themis's 3 shots were big. And I think, if I remember right, I don't know the stats in front of me, I think South only made 3 threes in the game.
3 for 10. That's right.
And Themis Folks makes 3 by himself. And
that's right.
He had done that against Monroe at home. He made a couple of threes in that game when they backed off of him. So really proud of him, and more so than the threes too, Dave. He got to the cup and made a couple of tough layups, just like the reverse he made in Mobile to help clinch that win.
Yeah, he really did. Let's take one more time out. We'll be back to talk to Coach Marlin about the Sun Belt Conference Tournament format. But first, again, special thanks to everyone who's been tuning in. We've increased the subscribers. I know it's not a whole lot, but we've gone up about 50% in a month. So I do sincerely appreciate it. It seems to grow exponentially. So thank you very much. Please subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you get your audio podcast from. We're all over the place. Not difficult to find. Just search Locked On Sunbelt. We do appreciate it, and we continue to provide good content, and more spring football is coming up. That is for sure. South Alabama spring football is coming up beginning next Friday. Hopefully we can get the head coach of the local football team to come on and join the show. But let's get back to college basketball. Bob Marlin, Louisiana Ragin Cajuns head basketball coach, talking about the format of the Sun Belt Conference Tournament in Pensacola. We're talking to head coach Bob Marlin, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. All right, I'll ask you, what do you think of the format? Because you've been in the Sunbelt a little bit longer than I've been covering it. I'm not sure the Sunbelt has had the same tournament format 3 years in a row. It seems to always be changing, and this year it changed because more teams in the conference, which I thought was great. But you did have a couple of off days in there. Obviously, a top 4 seed that makes it all the way to the championship game is only going to play 3 ball games. And you're right. South admitted they got a little bit tired, but again, wouldn't go away. But, you got these games that, Texas State is playing and then they get an off day. And then South Alabama is playing and then they get an off day. What do you think about the format for the Sun Belt Conference Tournament? Because it is interesting on how that all works out.
Well, adding the 4 teams and losing 2, or adding 2 additional teams, I should say, makes it for a challenging bracket with uneven teams to, if we had 16, it'd be a little bit easier. But the way we did the play-in game, I think it's fair, Dave. Our league's really good this year. I think maybe the best it's been in 10 years. And it was a challenge to get through it. And if you should be rewarded if you finish in the upper half, and
right,
certainly the top 4 with a double bye. But I don't know what else you can do with it, especially playing the women's tournaments at the same time.
Right,
there's just not enough time and space. And I think the Sun Belt did a great job. Pensacola did a great job. I think the tournament was well received. I think the title game, as you said, was a really good basketball game. An entertaining game probably for the national audience. So felt like the tournament's kind of where it needs to be. Now, some coaches will say, well, you got a week off, and I heard Jay's press conference, and he talked about loss of rhythm or whatever, but he referred back to when he was in high school in Mississippi coaching there. But you always, what do you want? Do you want to play in a playing game, or do you want some time off and have less traffic? You have to go with the time off. And if you think about it, Dave, between the conference tournaments all over the country, now ours is early and over on Monday, which I was a big proponent of that and pushed for that. But a lot of these teams will be playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they're going to turn around and play the next week. They're going to have a week off too. So you can make out of it whatever you want. I do feel there's an advantage for a team that, like Texas State, that comes in and plays super well, and then they beat Old Dominion and they got a day off. I do think that's an issue when you play a team that has played on the court, which we never can even get on to shoot.
Right.
And then you haven't played. So I've seen it work both ways. But you know what, Dave? At the end of the day, I always feel like the best team wins.
Well, usually everybody seems to think that, and I think the best team, certainly the most talented team, everybody was asking me what I thought, and I just thought the Cajuns were bad. I know a bad matchup, but a really tough matchup for South Alabama. Too much size with Jordan Brown and Terrence Lewis and Richards when he was in there, and Joe Charles, just a little bit too much size for South. Whereas I thought, against JMU and Southern Miss, I thought, they could get those games. Although I do think, thinking back, right, you played, in the quote first round or second round maybe in 2014, and I think that was a benefit because the team you played next hadn't played, and you played better. Although I'm not sure if this is on YouTube, Coach, because I remember the play. I think it was in the championship game in 2014. Alfred had the ball, and he fed somebody, and the person he fed fell down, and because he fell down, nobody boxed him up. He had an open layup.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And back then, Dave, you're right. There were two teams, Georgia State and Western Kentucky, the two teams that we played and beat.
Right.
They got double buys. So there were two teams. So they only had to play two games. And we played, I remember like it was yesterday, we were supposed to play at 7:30 on Friday night against UTA. And
triple overtime.
The Arkansas State and Little Rock game went into like 3 or 4 overtimes.
Right. And
we wound up tipping about, 9:30, 9:40. And the game, Alfred was in foul trouble. We beat a pretty good UTA team, got back to the hotel, had to come back and play Western the next day, and then Georgia State the next day at noon. So it was a whirlwind 72 hours for sure.
Was that Zimbabwe? Who was that? Mbabalu? Bamalu, yes. I just remember that because of course I'm not seeing it at the time, but you see that replay with Sean Long in there and Alfred Payton, and Mbabalu is actually on the ground. Someone gets the rebound and feeds him, and you can't blame somebody for doing that because he's on the ground. How do you box out somebody on the ground? All right, so let's wrap it up here with Bob Marlin, head coach of the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns, Locked On Sunbelt. All right, speaking of time off, you do have some time off. You will have 10 or more days off playing on Monday, and you won't play until the following Thursday or Friday. How do you handle that? And any update on Greg Williams?
Well, certainly needed some time off, and you play 3 games in 3 days, and then travel and the excitement, the energy that we spent there. As we said earlier, it was a thrill, but also a relief to get that done. And the guys, I was so happy for them, Dave. They were so excited. And they need some time off. So we got back yesterday afternoon, got into class today and trying to get caught up with our academic work, study hall, mentors, all the tutors, all the different things we do with them from an academic standpoint. And then tomorrow, we took off yesterday and we took off today. So we'll come back on Thursday, and we have two groups that will come in and work. And we'll do individual development, player development, watch a little film. We're going to do the same thing Friday, and then we're going to have our first team practice Saturday morning before I go throw out the first pitch at the baseball game. that day at 2 with the team. So
don't bounce it. Don't bounce it.
I told you what Robe told me, right?
No, what did he say?
I bounced it up there, and so I told Robe he was actually ejected from the game before, so he had to sit out the game. But he was in the Cox building, and I went to his office and I said, I threw a one hopper up there. He goes, that's fine. He goes, the guy did put down one finger, right? It's one hop, two's two hop. So, no, but that's what we'll do. Go to the baseball game, and then Sunday we'll be off, and after church we'll have the Selection Sunday event. It looks like here they're gonna have a little celebration for that, and then the coaches are already at work breaking down film on potential opponents.
How would you do that? Who is a potential opponent? I mean, how do you figure that one out? That you could have 63 potential opponents. How does that,
Well, it's easier than that, Dave, but there is probably 8 to 12 that that play, because 13, I don't know where we'll be seated. I have no idea. But if we finish and if we get the 14th spot, right? I think we could be the last 13 or 13 or first 14. That's my gut. When we went back in 2014, we were a 14 seed. We played Creighton, who was a 3rd seed. So and the other 2 trips I've been, we were 15s. When we played, I was at Sam Houston. We played Florida and Tampa, and then we played Baylor and New Orleans.
All right. Yeah, I did. I actually saw that. I saw Joe Lenardi, Bracketology, has you as a 14 seed against Tennessee. It could be interesting matchups as we will be watching with you on Selection Sunday. He is Bob Marlin. He is the 2-time Sun Belt champion. The Ragin Cajuns take down South Alabama on Monday in Pensacola, and the Cajuns are heading back to the NCAA Tournament. Congratulations, Coach. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and hope to talk to you again soon. We'll talk baseball next time.
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds great. Thank you, Dave.